practicing a lot. Spent a lot of time in the field. I've killed, if experience is any sort of qualification, I've killed 10 to 12 whitetails between 120 and 150 inches with a rifle. I've killed 6 whitetails with my bow that are all publicly qualified. Largest of which is in the top 5 whitetails of all time in the state of Idaho, killed with a bow. This is what I do. My passion is whitetails. If there's a technique or tactic, I've tried it or debunked it, figured out how to do it. So I've got my notes to try to keep me on track here. These are a couple deer I've killed over the years. One on the far left is that largest whitetail taken with my bow at 168 inches. This one here, 12.5-year-old whitetail I killed with my bow last fall. And this is the largest whitetail I've ever chased in my life. He was found at a little over 190 inches. I know this class isn't super big, but I wanted to put this in here. There's a lot of people who want whitetails, so a lot of people have different tactics. Understand what I'm going to tell you today. This is not the end-all be-all on whitetails. This is based on my successful percentages. These are based on a lot of other people's successful percentages, and so if all these things are going to kill more deer, you're going to kill more mature deer. So this is not an all-inclusive take on whitetails. It is a pretty well-rounded take. Personality whitetails. This is going to be a big one. Between your doe groups and your buck groups. Your doe groups are going to be your doe groups are going to be paramount. Understanding your doe groups and how to hunt your doe groups is going to help you hunt your bucks, right? So you need to understand where your does are living, the personality of your does, and this is going to become vital as we talk throughout this entire seminar. Finding your doe groups. The social interactions with does, they want to be together, right? But they're not, when you see a lot of deer all together in one field, that is multiple doe groups together. They don't want to be together all the time. So you need to understand where does are feeding is not necessarily where doe groups are living. So they will break apart into their bedding areas, into 3, 4, 5 does, and so you need to know where they're bedding, where they're coming to feed, and your bucks are going to be above them. So understand your doe groups is going to be vital to hunting your bucks. And if you just want to harvest a doe, understanding where they live is obviously important. Aggressive bucks. So there's aggressive bucks and there's socially shy bucks. The biggest buck I killed, he was a socially shy deer. So you need to understand tactics and understand different tactics for different deer. Using really aggressive calling, rattling techniques for socially shy deer, you're just going to blow them out of the area. As bucks mature, they become more and more socially shy. So if you go into an area, you're like, man, there's a ton of deer here. There's 25 does in here and there's 15 bucks in here. I would almost guarantee you're not seeing a mature buck within that social group. They want to be away from that. They do not like social pressure. They want to be away from those other deer, and that's where they live most of their life. They are going to interact on what we call community scrapes throughout the rut. You're going to see them come down into those doe group areas, which is why it's important. I'm going to bounce around a lot during this seminar, by the way. So I'm going to touch on some things I'm going to touch on more later. And again, if you have questions, just make sure that I answer them. So understanding your personality of your whitetails is going to affect your strategy. Understanding how aggressive they are or not aggressive they are. If they're laying down huge scrape lines, or if they're just barely showing up on camera when no other deer are around, understanding what they're doing and why they're doing it. If you see them running off other bucks, obviously you have a really aggressive whitetail in the area. Aggressive bucks can be kind of a, for lack of better terms, pain in the ass. If you're trying to hunt one specific socially shy whitetail, they will push even more mature bucks out with their aggressiveness. So, how many of you guys have actually hunted whitetails? Pretty much everyone. How many people have less than 3 years experience? Okay. We're getting into whitetails. We got to figure out what our goals are. We got to set realistic hunting goals. So, are you hunting deer or are you hunting a deer? Are you hunting a specific mature deer? So you have to make that decision before you go into the season, and that's going to affect how you chase whitetails, right? If you're just trying to find deer, that is one thing. figuring out where a specific deer is living, where one mature buck is living, that is what I specialize in. That's what I do with a bow. I specialize in finding the deer. And so that gets a little bit more difficult, and I can try to touch on that, but we can go down that rabbit hole for 3 more hours. So, setting your season goals. What is your schedule commitment? You're a busy guy, you work a lot, busy gal, you don't get to go out to the field and scout in the spring and summer. What can we do, right? We can still figure out how to hunt mature bucks with a busy schedule. I'm going to talk about how later on. These are kind of the things I ask myself or ask people when they're going into the field, right? You want to see more bucks? Are you just trying to harvest meat? You just want to put meat in the freezer? You're trying to kill mature bucks? Or are you just trying to understand deer market? So each one of these goals is going to affect the way you're going out into the field and doing things, and affect ultimately how your season's going to go, based on whether you're setting realistic goals. So, whitetails. They're the most versatile species on earth. You can find whitetails everywhere. They can be found in Philadelphia, they can be found in downtown Boise. You can find them all the way up at 8,000 feet in the Selkirks. Deer are where you find them, right? Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean a whole lot, right? We gotta locate these things down to a small area that we can hunt. Understand, that looks like a lot of different things. So what I'm going to try to tell you is what you're looking for specifically. So what I'm looking for when I'm scouting for whitetails, when I'm looking for where my doe groups want to be, or where my bucks want to be, especially early season. You're looking for the new soft grasses coming up. These are some of the more popular grasses. You don't have to know how to identify them. Deer are going to show you what they look like when you go out in the field. If you're going out there scouting, you see grass that's been chewed on, it looks like it's been mowed. That's one of these soft grasses, right? Clovers are an obvious one. Clovers are full of protein, full of calcium. I love clovers. The young new fir growth boughs. These are one of my favorite ones, especially actually when I'm timber hunting in the spring and I'm looking for antlers. If you've got a tree that's fallen over that has fresh fir bough growth on top, you will oftentimes find antlers at the end of those. They really, really like those for whatever reason. Huckleberries, obviously a huge food source, especially high up in the mountains for bucks. These are one of somewhere I kill some of my biggest whitetails is near huckleberry patches. Of course, that also means there's bears in the area, so that brings a whole nother strategy in. Essentially, you're looking for soft palatable shrubbery. You're looking for something that looks like a deer would want to eat, right? This isn't really rocket science. We're looking for soft new growth. We're looking for things that have been eaten off. This bush, should be 5-6 feet tall. It's 3 feet tall. It's been eaten off, right? It's been eaten off year after year after year after year. So these are things that you're looking for, especially in early season. We're looking for high protein, right? I mean, does they're fawning, they're making milk, they're eating everything with high protein. Clovers, that's going to be your biggest one. You can find clover areas in pastures, in soft sedge areas. Now, we're not hunting deer in the summer. We're not hunting deer in the spring. So why do we care about the early season, right? Well, we're looking for late season stuff at the same time. That looks like woody browse. So the world hates a monoculture. If you go into an area and it's all old growth, or it's all pasture grass, or it's all clovers, deer are going to live there. They're going to feed there, right? You're going to see them feeding there. They're not going to live there. You need to find all-around, all-season food. We're looking for woody browse. The same thing that they're eating in the spring. They're going to also turn around and eat in the fall. They're just not eating the same thing. When they're eating the huckleberries in the summer, in the wintertime they're eating the huckleberries because they're eating the woody browse. Like their digestive system changes. It's going to be very woody browse that you're looking for. So all the similar huckleberry type, low shrubbery, ceanosis, vine shrubbery, tamaracks. They do eat a lot of tamarack, a lot of pine needle type stuff. Late season. That's why our whitetails in the mountains struggle, because this is what they're surviving on. They don't have that same food source that guys in Ohio have, corn, things like that. So we're looking for the woody browse, especially if we're going to start hunting deer late season with a bow in December. This is going to be your biggest one. If you give me any month to hunt, it would be December, where I find bucks on late season food. They got to eat, and they got to eat a lot. So what does a late season food plot look like for you, right? Because We can't feed deer in Idaho. Here in Washington, you can. If you're hunting somewhere else, you sure probably could. So what are we looking for? We're looking for a mountain food plots. We're looking for not a monoculture, okay? One of the best things that I have ever hunted that you can find is an old clear cut that's at least 5 years old. But they're productive up to 60, 70, 75 years old. They're really, really prime around 15 years old because they have a whole lot of different grasses. They got the huckleberries, they've got the ceanosis, they've got the new firs. They've got everything that you're looking for, and it also gives you an edge on the old timber growth to hunt. And so mature bucks will feed into these because there's a lot of cover, there's a lot of concealment, there's a lot of protein. So when you're scouting, e-scouting, you're in the mountains, a mountain food plot is what I call it, is what you're looking for, these old clear cuts. Now this is trying to translate to you guys because I'm a mountain archery whitetail guy, so this is going to look different as we get lower, we get towards ag fields, as we start looking at different things where we're not necessarily, you guys aren't hunting the deer in the mountains. You say, I want to hunt deer down low, I want to hunt deer down on my farmland. It looks a little bit different. You're still looking for that variation in browse. You're still looking for that bedding area where those bucks can get up and feed. Old growth. If you're in old growth, it's not good habitat. They will bed in it. They will likely use it as a transition zone. You might even get them on camera during the daylight, moving from one transition area to another. However, the world hates monoculture, right? What do we got in old growth timber? We have old firs, we have old cedars, we have nothing but pine needle forests, and there's nothing. And so if you're looking for bucks moving on their feet, which I assume most of us are looking for bucks, I'm just going to speak like we are. They have to get up and feed, right? I'm going to touch on this in a little bit, but old growth, the feed is not there. It's a good cold bedding area. You might even find elk in it, hidden wallows in those deep canyons, but they're not going to be living there. So transition zones is something we're going to touch on later, but that's something you need to understand. A lot of guys will put their cameras in transition zones, and so they're seeing a lot of deer, and a lot of times it's at night, and they're not actually hunting the deer where they're hunting in these transition zones, and they're not. Okay. So what we're looking for vertical trails and lateral trails when we're out scouting. Vertical trails. This is where a lot of guys will hang their trail cameras because these trails generally are super deep. They look like animals are traveling them a ton, and they are generally at night. The vertical trails we're transitioning, right? We're trying to go from feed to bed. We're transitioning into the old growth to get into where we want to bed on top of the ridge. Vertical trails are a nighttime movement, very, very, very early in the morning. You can catch them on there, it does happen, but it's fairly rare. Lateral trails. This is where our mature bucks live. This is where you get your daylight. This is where they're comfortable. When you start following those vertical trails, which are important, these vertical trails aren't going to something, right? Or they're not just there for no reason. So they're going to bedding area, they're going to feed, they're going to something. Generally, it's up away from a feeding area, they're scouting low. If you're on an agriculture field, you've probably seen a ton of these headed up the mountain. Once you get high enough on that mountain, with certain elevation, you start seeing lateral lines along in those trees, or along the south slopes. You start seeing where they're feeding. That's where they're comfortable. That's where you're going to catch them on their feet. And for archery guys, this is their bread and butter. Usually we're trying to find them on ridges, trying to find them on flat spots, up with lateral trails, moving to and from. We're looking for scatter. Is it fresh? Is it old? Is it summertime? What's it telling me? You know, animals generally aren't just pooping everywhere. Yeah, generally they have to be in an area that they're comfortable in. So if you start following these vertical trails and you find these lateral lines, and all of a sudden, oh, look at all this poop that I'm suddenly seeing, it's because they're comfortable in that area, they're feeding in that area. Now, obviously this is a generalization. You're going to start seeing more and more as they get into the comfortable zones. You will see random piles of scatter. But you can look at scat if you're really good and figure out if it's a mature buck, young deer, based on size. I'm running scrapes and rubs. This is primarily what I'm looking for, because I'm a mature buck guy. So I'm looking for where my doe groups intersect with my bucks. Community scrapes. And I'm gonna try not to dive down the rabbit hole of community scrapes, because we'll be here for another 3 hours. The community scrapes, deer are social. And I said they're socially shy. It's true, but they have to socialize. They have to. They have to talk to each other. So what does that mean? Does talk to each other better. You can hear them talking to each other all the time. Does aren't generally laying down big markers. They're not doing the big scrapes. They're not doing the rubs, right? They've got the others. So all deer, especially in the mountains, will communicate over community scrapes. Every deer on that mountain will hit a community scrape. They have to. They have to know who lived, who's in the area, who didn't make it through the winter, who's coming into heat. The does will check them, they will mark them. This is, if you can get the right elevations in the right areas, scrapes are one of your best things to hunt. Now, don't mistake scrapes with rubs. Rubs on tree lines are completely different. Some guys see rubs in the woods and they get real excited. I would say 90% of all rubs don't mean anything. 90% of all rubs are rough rubs. So it's a fired up 2.5, 3.5-year-old buck, and he's just rubbing every tree he walks by. Doesn't mean anything. Now, if you want to hunt it and see if that 3.5-year-old's going to come back, it's possible. You're looking for old rub lines. You don't want those tiny brand new saplings that have just been rubbed up. You want an old rub line with a community scrape mixed in there. You want to find where this deer has been marking this, and his dad has been marking it, and his cousin's been marking it for 25, 30 years. So when we're looking for rubs, the fresh rubs are fun to look at. They're all run rubs, and we get excited because there's bucks in the area. And if you just want to shoot young bucks, that's great, and I think that's great for you. And that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for big mature bucks and you're trying to go to scout out in the summer, that's not what you're looking for. Obviously, we're looking for tracks, right? We've got to be able to decipher between buck tracks, doe tracks, and then, of course, antlers. Antlers are going to tell us where bucks are living, generally late season, as long as they're not being pushed around. If you can find a set of sheds and a big mature buck, he is bedding somewhere within that 500-yard area, and you can kill him that next fall in that area. I have done this 3 times now, where I go into an area, find a big set of sheds, scout him out, figure out where he's at, figure out where he's bedding, build a community scrape on top of him, and kill him within 300 yards away from the sheds. So, I'm going to try to show you what I'm talking about here. So this is a community scrape. This is a mock community scraper that I built myself. That's me in that picture. This is one I found in the mountains, fresh in the spring. They're deep, they're big, they're 4, 5, 6, 7 inches deep in the dirt. This is something that deer have been hitting in the mountains for 25, 30 years. Every deer on this mountain knows where this scrape is. They're born on this scrape, their mother takes them to the scrape. I get 2-week-old fawns on these scrapes. It's where the community, right? The buck I killed last fall, this old timer right here, that's that scrape in that left-hand picture there. I killed him right on top of that scrape. This is me on my tree stand, taking a video of this young buck hitting that same scrape. They all want to hit it. This is all daylight. This one was at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I killed him at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They want to hit these community scrapes. So this is your bread and butter, especially if you're hunting the mountains, is finding these community scrapes. This one in the middle, this is a rut scrape. You'll find these along road lines. You'll find them on trails. You're going to find them in November. You're going to find them on Thanksgiving. This is a young, fired up buck. He is making scrapes every 100 feet along the roadway. This is not something you want to hunt. He's not ever going to visit this again. He's just pissing in the snow, making scrapes. This is a waste of your time. It's fun to look at, but that's a rut scrape. So when you're looking for these community scrapes, they're deep. This is an active rub line. That's what I was talking about when you're looking at different rubs, what you're looking for. This old tree right here has been rubbed for 15 years. And you can see the tracks in the snow This is an old buck that has been using this rub line for years, marking. And there's actually a community scrape that I found about 100 yards up this old mountain trail here. This is what you're looking for. This, I know this slideshow is not really clear on those pictures, but let's give you an idea. Obviously, identifying your bucks from your does. Bucks are going to have more splayed out. They're heavier, obviously, so their toes splay out. They're going to have dew claws in the back. This is very indicative of a mature buck, seeing the dew claws. And not even necessarily a mature buck. You can see this in 2.5-year-old, 1.5-year-old bucks. You will sometimes see this on doe tracks, in heavy mud, things like that. They're sinking down, and so they're splaying out, and you're seeing those dew claws. Every deer has them, but you just only generally see them on mature bucks. And obviously does are more well-rounded, they're all pointed in. They don't generally splay out unless they've got some sort of foot injury. And you can figure out if you've got mature bucks in the area just looking at the tracks coming through. Okay, so I know I said I'm going to bounce around a lot on the map. This is probably the most important part of this whole presentation. So, we've got to emergency this guy together, right? What are we doing? I said our doe groups are important. They are the most important. Right? We are figuring out where they live. Now, cheat code, I can tell you where they live. Right? Does are going to live at the lowest elevations. Lowest elevations you can find. If that's 1,000 feet, that's where it is. If that's 2,000 feet, that's where it is. If that's 4,000 feet, that's where it is. Generally, they get lower than that. But your lowest elevations up to about 3,200 feet is where the majority of your doe groups are going to be, right? Some are going to live more high, some are going to have these socially shy does, we call them usually dry does, who are by themselves. You can't find them higher up, and you will. So don't call me a liar when you do. But 95% of your doe groups are going to be below 3,200 feet. Now, this is a fun threshold. This is a threshold that I look for specifically for community scrapes, because your bucks like to come down to that 3,200 foot, 3,000 foot elevation to check those scrapes. They live above your doe groups. 95% of your time, bucks are going to be above your doe groups, unless we have other limiting factors like road systems and everything else, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So, did you find your bucks? All right, we're doing all our scouting. We find where our bucks are living. Are we e-scouting? What are we doing? Are we in the field? Are we running cameras? If we can't get in the field, your bucks are high. I'm telling you right now, your bucks are above your doe groups. Figure out where your doe groups are, go higher, there's your bucks. Now, October lull. This is one I hear a lot. You know, guys talk about the October lull. Does anyone here believe it exists? This guy does. Of course it does. That's all right. I won't judge you. October lull does not exist. It is a non-existent thing. If you gave me 2 months to hunt out of the year, it'd be October and December. I wouldn't even touch November. I dislike November because my mature bucks are off chasing doves. Everything I've patterned them to do, they've disappeared. October, they are the most patternable they have ever been. They are hardcore now. They're not out in the open where they were during the summer. We were seeing them in velvet. That's all that's changed, is they've just gone to their fall patterns where they want to pull up. Where is that? It's 2,800 foot up to 6,000 foot. Yeah, you can't find them above that. Generally, you don't. 90% of your bucks, especially your mature bucks, are going to be between 2,800 and 6,000 feet. October lull doesn't exist. Deer have to feed. They have to feed, right? So, if you look at the statistic, 90% of a deer's greatest movements are at night. Don't mistake that with the 90% of deer's movements are at night. It's greatest movements. So they will travel a long ways to get feed, especially at night. So you might catch a deer on camera 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's 4 miles from where he lives. You cannot get excited until you get that deer within 20, 30 minutes of shooting line. If he is at 2 o'clock in the morning, I guarantee you you're more than 3 miles away. I have one deer on camera. I'm going to show you a picture of him. I get him on camera 4 miles away at 2 o'clock in the morning almost every night, and I get him on daylight at 12 o'clock in the afternoon where he's actually living 4 miles away on the other side of the ridge. And if I didn't have 2 different cameras out there, I would never been able to know that. So, they feed 2 to 3 times per day. They need 12 to 18 pounds of food per day. So the October lull, the reason why I say it doesn't exist is because guys are going out and they're hunting does. They're seeing these does out feeding in October. They're like, man, I see all these does, tons of does. I don't see any bucks. What's going on? Because you're hunting does. You're not hunting bucks. The bucks are above the does. The bucks are in that brushy area. They're up there where they're secure. They're up there where they can feed during the day and not get killed, where they're not having that social pressure. This is where social pressure comes in huge. Once they get to about 2.5, 3.5, they even start feeling the social pressure. They don't want to be around does during October. They're not ready. They're not feeling that activity. And so does are loud. Does stink. Does make noise. Does attract predators. Bucks are above them. They're in the brush. They're away from them. So if you're hunting and all you're seeing is does, keep going. You're wasting your time. However, keep track of those doe groups, right? Where are those doe groups coming from? Where do you see them coming from their bedding areas? Because you'll see them working into a feeding area, especially in October. Does are out feeding all the time. That's going to be important if you're a November rut. Where are those doe groups living? You want to hunt does similar to the way you hunt bucks, in such a way that you want to know where they're living, not necessarily where they're feeding. If you know where does are living, that's where the bucks are going to be on in the middle of the day, as soon as the rut starts. And you're going to kill a mature deer every year if you can get a doe in their bedding area with a buck. So, how are we making that move using trail cameras? This is one guys mess up a lot. I talk about getting trail cam photos at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And I got a lot of guys that send me pictures and look at this big mature buck I got on camera, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't get excited for it because you're not close to that deer. So, we need to start making movements, right? We get that deer on camera, maybe he's 20 minutes from shooting line. We know we're close, right? We know we're within 200 yards of that deer, where he's bedded during the daylight. If you're within 20 minutes of legal shooting line, he is close. They are cautious, they move slow. 20 minutes is not that long. So you need to make a 50-yard move, 75-yard move. Don't make a 200-yard move into his bedding area and blow him out of there. But you need to start making moves towards that deer to figure out where he's actually living in the daylight and where he's getting up to feed. Now, if you're a rifle hunter, and you can kind of generalize him down to a 600-yard area in this north slope, and you got shooting lanes, you got a little bit of a more effective range than archery guys do who got to nail them down right to their bedding area. So, how I do it, when I start getting deer on camera, if I've got one on camera that is an hour or 2 after dark, I know that deer has already probably traveled a mile to get to my camera. If it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, I go even further. I look at the map. What have I missed? Where could he be bedding that I missed? Where is he not getting social pressure? Where did he disappear? Where is the feed and the bedding that I've missed? Because remember, he has to feed during the daylight. I don't care how old they are. 8.5-year-old, 9.5-year-old whitetails are up in the middle of the day feeding. I've killed some of my best bucks in the middle of the day, right out of the window. They have to feed. So if you're not getting them during daylight, it's because you're not close. So make the move. Make sure I can stay on track here. Just a second, gentlemen. Alright. A lot of things I've talked about is putting a whole ton of effort into scouting, right? Into going to the field and seeing it firsthand and putting out cameras. And maybe you don't want to run trail cameras, maybe you don't want to buy cameras, maybe you don't have the time to go out and get a job, Some of us don't, I don't know. So you can't scout night and run trail cameras all spring and summer and fall. What do we do now, right? Now what do we do? We have to learn how to read maps. We have to know how to e-scout. All the most successful hunters spend the majority of their time applying the knowledge that they've learned into the maps online before they ever go out in the field. I will spend 30 hours looking at maps, nailing things down before I ever go out into the field and check something out. Now, this is probably the most important part of that. Sometimes you have to be okay with failure. Sometimes the maps aren't up to date. Sometimes there's road systems there that weren't on the map. Sometimes things are completely deceiving. Sometimes I'll show up to an area and it turns out I don't have the feed I thought I did. It's not what it looked like on the map. I don't actually have those soft shrubs I'm looking for. I don't have that nice woody browse. Going in the fall, I've got one monoculture crop in here, and there's deer in the area, but they're not deer that I want to hunt in this area because they're going to move a long ways to areas that we actually want to be in. This is probably the #1 hitch in Idaho, is the road systems. There's a lot of road systems. So, we talked earlier, the buck ribs want to be high. They want to be 27, just what, 6,000 feet, right? What is the public pressure? What is the road system doing? I have killed mature bucks down at 2,200 foot elevation. So I know I look like a liar, but the reason what was is because all the road systems were up high. They're pushing those bucks down, and we're getting that negative pressure from the public. Negative pressure is what you're looking at when you're east scouting. Where is that negative pressure coming from? Where can they disappear to? Where can they live without getting that negative pressure? So how are the road systems being used, or how are they not being used? Is there one to scout? All right, let's go out there and check and see if this road is actually being heavily used. Or Onyx Live, this is a blocked road that's actually thrown in that nobody can get in on a four-wheeler, dirt bike, or foot, and it's something people aren't going to be in. That's where you're going to find your mature bucks. Again, this is all advanced. We're looking for the most mature bucks in the hill, right? If you're just looking for deer, right, we're just looking for saddles. We're looking for those transition areas. We're looking for those nice ridges that they can bet on. They got the wind in their favor. We're looking for those meadows. Those meadows hold feed. We're looking for benches on the side of the mountains. We're looking for old clear cuts. They're going to have deer. So what are we looking at when I'm talking about an old mountain food plot? So it doesn't look like a whole ton on the map. This is a 20-year-old clear cut. That's grown in. And I actually hunted this. There's no access through it. That's a walking trail only. This has got all the feed a deer could possibly want. I've got my old growth timber on the side. So I've got a cutoff that I know deer might be betting 50 to 100 yards in to come out and feed into this stuff. This one didn't end up working out because of the wind. The way the ridge line worked on me, the wind swirled too much in the middle of the day. And so when the bucks wanted to be on their feet moving, I was blowing them out of their bedding area. But I didn't know that until I was up there, right? There's sometimes you fail. Sometimes you get up there and you figure out, yeah, this isn't what it would seem like, and the wind is doing something different. Ridge lines affect that tremendously. So this is probably the most important one, and probably the funnest one to me, is guys hunting agriculture fields. In October specifically, is when people say there's an October lull because they're hunting ag fields where all this great feed was all summer long, and these deer were all summer long, and now they're getting pictures of these bucks still feeding at 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning, or whatever it is, and okay, the October lull exists. It doesn't. Where are these bucks going, right? So I look at this, and this is fun for me. Man, look at how much feed is on this hillside. This is an old cut that's been grown in for 15, 25 years, and I know for a fact all of my doe groups are feeding down in these fields. I know they're down there every single night. So where are my bucks at? Where do my bucks want to be? They're on ridge lines, they're up on flats, they're up on saddles. They're living up here a mile away, up on these benches, up here on these flats. They got the wind in their favor. They can get down to that feed in 45 minutes, no problem. They can feed all day long. No one's bugging them up there. There's not road systems pushing them out of there. They're not getting pushed up. This is textbook what I look for when I'm looking for an area to set up in a tree stand. The specific spot, not super great for a tree stand guy, and the fact that the winds, this is actually, so this is going to be something I talk about more shortly. Winds are huge back there, right? Most of our winds are southwest winds. So this is going to be our south here, so most of my winds are going to be southwest, and where I'm sitting on these saddles, it's going to be blowing into all those bedding areas. Unfortunately, I tried. I couldn't get in without pulling out. So that's a factor. Am I losing my time? 10 minutes? God damn. I apologize. These are just general, specific things that we're looking for. This is 2 different saddles. This is a transition zone, right? They're bedding over into this stuff. They're living in here in the daylight. They're feeding on this nice south face feed. And they're transitioning over here in the evenings. You're going to see your doves in here, hour, 2 hours before dark. And the elevation's good. This is the type of stuff I'm looking for, right? My feed, my bedding, my thermals, my water. This is the type of stuff you're looking for. This is also really perfect for those elevation bands that I was talking about, for those mature bucks where they want to live. They can be up there at that 4,000 foot and not be bugged. And even often sometimes, if they're really far away, they'll feed out in these open meadows in the middle of October. Wind, obviously touched on it. None of this means anything if you don't use the wind to your advantage. You always have to have an ingress and egress that does not blow your scent across the bed and feed area, especially if you're an archery guy. That mature buck will sneak out of there before you ever know he's even there. So this is the big one. I'm going to try to hurry this up because I got some fun stuff I want to look at here. Number one thing that guys mistake they make is they'll sit in the bottom of the draw. Because they'll see a heavy game trail, a lateral trail going through there. And the problem is in the draw, your thermals and your winds will swirl and cool all day long. You'll never kill a mature buck on the bottom of the draw without a 25-mile-an-hour wind in your face. Thermals, I'm going to try to go quick. Thermals are very important. You're going to change in the evening and in the mornings. Your warm air rising is going to carry your scent and your wind uphill. These can be extremely strong in Idaho, especially in the mountains. As those thermals start rising, that's oftentimes where those bucks are living. They're waiting for them thermals before they get on their feet because they want that scent to be blown up into their face. Because that wind's been coming down all night long, and they live on those thermals. So thermals will outmatch a 5 to 8 mile an hour wind. So understand thermals. Again, we can go into that for another 25-30 minutes. But we're running out. Come on and pay attention. Which I don't care. We can shut the lights off on us. Age of deer on the hoof. This is incredibly important if you're trying to hunt mature deer. If you're just trying to kill deer, this isn't that important. Now, if you're like, man, we don't ever see any mature bucks here, well, you can just kill your little bucks. If you're happy with that, I'm happy for you. I want that to be clear. You don't have to hunt mature bucks to be a hunter. If you want to kill big mature bucks, I love that for you. And you need to understand how to do that, though. So we look at this deer, and I look at this deer and I say, no. Right? I've got feminine legs, I've got small shoulders, I've got a nice little rounded body, I've got a skinny neck, weighs maybe 130 pounds. Generally looks like a doe. This is how you can decipher, generally, most of the time, a mature buck from an immature buck. You just cover its head. Does it look like a doe? You show it to your buddy, is this a doe or a buck? If he can't tell you the difference, it's probably a young buck. Now, this is a deer I have on camera specifically. This is a 2.5-year-old buck. This is a buck that 95% of guys in Idaho would shoot. But this is why you need to know if a deer is mature, because this is going to be a 175-inch deer. He is a mature buck. At 2.5 years old, he's a 7x5 split eye guards. Passes deer. This is the deer that I have on camera that I was talking about earlier. Where I'll get him at, this is 2 o'clock at night, 4 miles away from where I get him in the middle of the day where he's actually living. So just understand, we do have the genetics in Idaho to grow giants, but if you're shooting the young bucks and you're happy with that, that's fantastic. If you want to shoot a mature buck, understand antlers are not a distinguishable factor necessarily for a mature buck. So obviously what I talked about before, one of the biggest distinguishing factors we're looking at is that large muscular shoulder. Big mature bucks, they look like bodybuilders. Those front shoulders start filling out. They no longer look like a doe. They look like they can fight a guy. This is a 3.5-year-old whitetail, right? It might necessarily score higher, But this deer is 2 years or more mature than this deer. He's got the smaller shoulders, they're starting to fill in a little bit at 3.5 years old. He's still got that really centriform shape there. It's real rounded. That's very doe-like. That's a younger buck. Obviously you can see this buck is starting to pouch. He's starting to have slumped shoulders. He's starting to get them dropped hips. He's got the bigger brisket. Now, a bigger brisket is not necessarily indicative of a super mature deer. I've seen big briskets on a young buck. What is indicative of a mature buck is where that neck connects on that brisket. The lower it connects on that brisket, the more mature it is. You can see this buck on the right, that neck is connected pretty high on that shoulder line, while on the left, that neck is connected way down deep in that brisket. We can go into really nuanced things like how wide the skull cap is, how long the face is. But generally, on the fly, you try to raise maturity of a deer on the fly. You're looking at the body. I'm not looking at the antlers. I'm not looking at the head. That is indicative of a mature deer, but the body is going to give it away. So I cut it in time. 5 minutes for questions. Anybody write down any questions? Forrest.
If you're looking at a map, say on it, how do you find a community script of that?
So those elevation beds, what I'm looking at, right? You're not necessarily going to find a community scrape at every single one of those elevation beds that is perfect, right? But what I'm looking for is I'm looking for changing feature on the landscape, on the side of the mountain. I'm looking for a bench. It doesn't have to be a big bench. It's just something that deer can come on a lateral line, and there's a bench on the side of this mountain at 3,000, 3,400 feet, sometimes like a 600. You know, I've found them a little bit higher. Now, I will find terrain features on the map where I'm like, okay, I've got a bench that runs all the way around the side of this mountain with a perfect east-west slope. I got perfect bedding here. I got perfect feed. There's going to be a community scrape within 100 yards here. I show up for the first time in this one, right? That doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes they're not super easy to find. Ridge lines, you can find them pretty readily. You can find the right elevation bands that aren't cut up by four-wheeler trails. That's our biggest plight in Idaho. There's four-wheeler trails everywhere. And so there's no community scrapes that are generally used in the daylight. That's the other thing, right? Is we got to find these community scrapes and somewhere that they can use in the daylight without being pushed by the general public, by roads, by four-wheelers, by hunters out there every single day. I have found community scrapes, giant community scrapes, big as a carpet, 150 yards from the main road. I knew in my heart of hearts that there was no deer using this during the daylight. Threw a camera on it anyway, and I was right? But I wanted to see what was using. Build another community scrape, 300, 350 yards away, somewhere that could or wanted to be, and all of a sudden I picked up all those deer in the daylight. Right, so it's community scrapes. That's a class we can go on for hours. I mean, I can go down the rabbit hole, but that does get nuanced. You got something, Kristen? We're puzzled, man. World just got turned upside down. Anyone?
I got a question. Is it dumb to hunt deer from the ground?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, I mean, I can hunt them with a bow, I hunt them with a rifle.
Bow.
With a bow.
Yeah.
It's not dumb. You absolutely have to understand your winds. Your winds have to be perfect. So understanding where your winds are coming from, and where they're going, and what they're doing during that time. If you're trying to spot and stalk whitetail on the ground, let it on goes. Good luck.
Okay.
That's an impossibility that I haven't managed to figure out how to do. They set themselves up for success. They set themselves up in areas where they have security, right? And so you are hunting from the ground line, or brush line, or things like that. It's not impossible, not at all. Several of the deer I've killed, I could have killed them from the ground, I didn't. But then you can do it the same way, right? You're setting up your thermal winds and your prevailing winds in your favor. What does that look like? You're on the ridge line, and you've got a really steep drop north that's nasty behind you. You don't want to walk through it, you don't want to walk through it, right? You got a community scrape on that ridge line, you're set back on the edge of that with your brush, and understand that if your thermals are hooking down that ridge at all, then a buck, a big mature buck will J-hook in on you, and he'll sense you. So you wanna make sure that the wind is going down, that steep, nasty stuff. That's where I set up most of the time. If I can get my wind to blow down into the nasty stuff I walked into, I know a mature buck doesn't want to walk in that. Deer are inherently lazy. They are. They're like humans. They're going to take the path of least resistance. So you absolutely just hunt from the ground. You don't need a tree stand. Does it become more difficult? Yeah. You gotta go talk to the game. I ain't gonna lie to that. But it's not, I'm not gonna sit here and say don't do it. Rather than that's a fun task to do. And a lot of guys do. I mean, tree stands are cheap, right? And picking the right kill tree, I mean, that's we can go a long ways on that. But picking the right kill tree and everything like that becomes very difficult. But if you can set up a ground line where, or a brush line, and a lateral transition area where you know they're going to be, or a vertical line where they're going to be going from bed to feed, and you're going to see a lot of deer. That can be really beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Wilson, you have a question?
You found that the older a buck gets, the less he will travel from his bedding area to October to December.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, depends on the personality of the buck. Generally, a big mature buck is going to set himself up for success, away from younger bucks or from does. And so, I mean, they'll still walk up to 400 yards, mature buck, during the day, but they don't necessarily have to. They set themselves up in bedding areas that have to feed, so maybe they don't have to go 100 yards, 150 yards. Now, do they have to get water during that time? You need a lot of dry browse that doesn't have any water value to it. They might go 400 yards. Right? I wouldn't necessarily say 7.5-year-old buck is going to travel less far than a 40-year-old buck. He might just set himself up in a more remote spot that might be not as common sense, right? For guys, when you jump from that 1 to 4.5, 5.5 and up, maybe you start doing different things that really will buzz you, right? You start seeing really interesting behavior that really kind of makes you think, these things are smart. I don't even know how to do this, right? It's just like that. It's just like that. I would say that the further I go out in the mountains, away from people, in the most remote areas, my mature bucks in October are probably leaving mold. The number one predator of a mature buck in the mountains is a cougar. It's the number one predator of a mature buck. So if they can do most of their feeding during the daylight, and they're safe to do it within 400 yards of the bedding area, they will. At night, they are absolutely getting handled by cougars. So it kind of transitions. Obviously, as you get closer to town, more hunting pressure, that area is going to really go.
Do deer keep the same bedding area throughout the year? So, like, if I'm out there, so, as far as setting up camp.
Yes and no. I'm sorry, that's a loaded answer.
Same general area.
Yeah.
Like, how big of a area would you say a mature buck maintains throughout the year as a bedding area?
It depends on what public pressure is. Again, I mean, up in the mountains, I will legitimately get mature bucks on the same camera 2 days apart, 5 miles away, in daylight, right? But they have to feed the bed and security. They're comfortable in that drainage. And sometimes it takes one little thing and got bumped, and all of a sudden they're 7 miles away in another drainage, and they're not coming back. Well, I won't get them again for 2.5 months. They generally will not bed in the same bed every single night. They will pick a new bed. Now, if they're comfortable in an area, you might find them within 150 yards of that bed. Right? And then generally they're going to live in a specific drainage. So you're you're trying to figure out where he wants to be the most, where he's gonna, that's why community training is so important, because he's gonna be checking those during the daylight, especially as we come into October, where he has to check that, see who's coming in, see who survived, who's starting to run, what's the young guys coming up, what are they doing? Do I have a new aggressive buck that was trying to jump on my nose early, right? And so, I sent Mark the hell out on the scrapes in October, and then picked up my mature buck.
Okay, because I was just wondering as far as setting up cameras, even, you know, I've had cameras running since January, but how does that translate to what's gonna happen this coming fall? I mean, obviously I'm just giving a snapshot of what's out there, and I picked up a lot of information on how to translate that.
Right?
But is it worth it to start scouting now?
Yes, yes it is. Because the deer are still going to live in that area, right? They're going to transition where they're living, where they're open feeding, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go 15 miles. You know, if they're comfortable, they'll go 500 miles, right? So the picture I showed with the agriculture feeds, that's probably the best thing. You'll get mature bucks on that all spring and summer, right? Guys out there with their binoculars see these giant golden bucks, so excited. And then they go hard on them. And they move 500, 700, 800 yards of that ridge line. They're still in the area, right? They haven't gone anywhere. They're just not coming out there in their life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So they're not disappearing, right? So it is important to run trail cameras, understanding what's living in the area throughout the year, who made it, who didn't make it. But understanding how to translate that isn't necessarily like, well, he was here one time, right? If I only got a buck on camera one time at 12 o'clock at night, I'm not going to get excited about it. But, oh, that's cool. Let's figure out where it is, because he isn't living here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You got a question?
So to get to these remote spots that you like to go to, then, so do you just hike into all those spots? Because
Oftentimes, yeah.
you don't use a four-wheeler or something?
No.
Because I know you're saying that the roads and the noise and stuff, but is there a
Right.
degree to where you take your four-wheeler and then you hike? Or
I
do
don't
you
know
just
if
hike?
really.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I have a bike. If I can legally take a bike on a closed road, I will. If I can get 2, 3, 4 miles behind the block gate, and I can get into an area where the road, generally what I'm looking for is I'm trying to find where the road is going away from my feeding and bedding area. If everything is going this way, I'm going this way. I'm dropping off the ridge line into this bedding and feeding area, and anyone else coming up this road is going to continue to the left, and they're not bugging my deer over here.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah, so, I mean, sometimes, deer are adaptable, right? Again, we live in downtown Hayden. So if you're in an area that there's a ton of traffic, a ton of four-wheelers, figure out where the deer are going. Right? They still live there. They still have to live there. They can't travel 50 miles to go to somewhere better. They have to live there. So what you're talking about is something completely different. How do we hunt pressure deer now, right? So now you're looking at the e-scouting maps. You're looking where you're going in person and figuring out, if I was a deer, something was trying to kill me, right? Try to think like a predator and a prey. If something was trying to kill me here, where do I go? Where do I escape? How do I get away from these forests? How do I get away from the road? And that's why, like I talked about earlier, I killed a buck at 2,200 foot elevation. Because there was a main road that was pushing him down. He wanted to go by. I kept getting him bouncing up, but he kept getting pushed down. Because all the road systems were pushing him down low, and there was nothing below to scare him, right? Every time he went down below, he felt secure. And so even though everything in him was telling me I need to get above my doe groups, he had to live down there because he felt more secure. Right? So they disappeared to places that they come. Maturity, right?
Okay.
Does adapt. You see does in the middle of the day on the side of the four-wheel trail. You know, they figure it out. Every deer is going to adapt to the pressure that it's in.
Okay,
That makes sense?
yeah, so but for roads, like, are you meaning all roads or do you mean more busy roads? Because there's some that are, like the old logging roads and things that people will go on once in a while. Is that the kind of road you're talking about too, or is it just more the busyness?
The busiest roads, right, like paved roads or like busy county gravel roads
Okay.
are going to have the most effect. They're going to have daily travel, right?
Okay.
If it's like a road that it's walking traffic only, right? I'll hunt within 300 yards of that, no problem.
Okay.
If it's a gate that I come to, and obviously dudes have been driving around this gate for 25 years, every hunting season, I'm not wasting my time, right? Because as an archery hunter, I need that deer to want to be able to see them day back. And every single time a four-wheeler goes through there, it spooks him in the middle of the day. His area is getting smaller and smaller, so we're going further and further away, right? So my job is harder and harder and harder to figure out where the hell he is, where he disappeared to. In the very first picture, this buck down here. I thought I had this deer all to myself, and again, the largest whitetail I've ever chased in my life. October rifle season rolled around, and all of a sudden all this pressure showed up that I had no idea was there. It wasn't there all spring and summer, the pattern wasn't there, and this deer disappeared 8.5 miles away because of the drainage. That was the last picture I ever got of him, and I've never seen him since. So, and that's a true, that was something like Canadian one. That's a true mountain whitetail, and they do different things. They do a lot more difficult, but they have the area to disappear, right? They have that ability up there. And there's how many millions of acres? He can disappear again if he wants to. So if they have the ability to absolutely disappear, they absolutely will. For a rifle? When I'm set on with a rifle, I'm looking for areas that I can see a large amount of bedding area. Right? I'm looking for those really brushy south faces in the north that I can sit on. I have a 250 brush shot. I mind you, I haven't rifled in a long time because those are becoming few and far between the hands. But I'm looking for areas that I think those bucks could be better during the day. So that way, because and I've done this time and time again, when I was rifling, I'd watch areas like that for 2-3 hours, glass and then all of a sudden there's a buck standing up in the middle. Right? He was there the whole time, but you couldn't see him because he was better down. So you gotta sit on those type of areas for a long time. You will sit, wait them out. You will stand up in the middle of the day if it's there. Make sense? Okay.
Let's keep this rapid going.
All right, you guys want to wrap some stuff off?
Screen number 608. There.
608.
I recorded this, by the way.